Hello, everyone. My name is Ethel Benicio, and I am the University Union Lecture Director. On behalf of our entire organization and the New York Times, I want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. I would like to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, the indigenous people on whose ancestral land we now stand. Before I let the New York Times and the North Face introduce our amazing guest speaker, Chelsea Handler, and moderator Megan Twohey, I have a few University Union announcements. On April 13, University Union cinemas are screening the movie 12 Strong, followed by a live in-person talk with Mark Notch, who is the actual commander portrayed in the movie by Chris Hemsworth. Tickets are on sale in the Shine box office and online. Now please welcome to the stage Megan K. Schaefer from the New York Times.
How's it going, Syracuse? I'm Megan K. Schaefer with the New York Times, and we are so thrilled you're here tonight for our conversation with Chelsea Handler and Megan Twohey. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but before we do, I have a few housekeeping notes and announcements I want to share with you. Tonight's conversation is going to be live streamed to thousands of other students who are hosting watch parties across the country. From San Diego State out west to the University of Nebraska in the Midwest to Rutgers and Howard on the East Coast. Those students are tuning in tonight on Facebook, and you will hear from some of them later during the question and answer portion of the program. So tonight, you are a live studio audience. Feel free to laugh and clap as you normally would, but please silence your cell phones and be respectful during this event. So here's how the night will unfold. You'll see a brief presentation from Emily Harrington, a professional rock climber, skier, and adventurer on the North Face team. Then we're going to ask you to sit tight for a couple of minutes while we get ready for the show to officially begin, at which point you'll hear from me again. Once the show starts, Chelsea and Megan will have a conversation for about 25 minutes, then we'll take questions, where you'll hear from students at other colleges, as well as some of your peers. Then we'll have 15 minutes of extra time at the end of the show for you to ask Chelsea your questions, with the show ending around 9:15. Finally, tonight, a lucky 3 of you are going to get some gear from our sponsor, the North Face. Right after the show ends, we'll do a drawing here on stage, so please stick around. So let's get started. To kick things off, we're going to play a short video from the North Face. It's all about their Move Mountains campaign, which launched this week.
I heard Amy Poehler speak at the White House. Her words hit me hard like a light bulb. Fictitious depictions of cosmos die out. If we want to live in a world that triumphs, I am just talking about loving the femme. I ain't talking about nobody else. I'm just talking about loving ourselves.
Woo! Amazing. And now, I'm pleased to introduce Emily Harrington, one of the many trailblazing women who are being celebrated through the Move Mountains campaign. Emily is a professional rock climber, skier, and adventurer who has traveled the world for over 2 decades, exploring remote places, climbing some of the most difficult rock faces, and summiting and skiing down the highest peaks in the world. In competition, she is a 5-time U.S. national championship and 2-time North American champion. After a decade of success in climbing competitions at the highest level, Emily's adventurous spirit has led her to blaze new trails in the mountains, notching first female ascents on some of the hardest technical routes around the globe, free climbing big walls and summiting the world's tallest peaks. Please join me in welcoming Emily Harrington.
When I first started climbing, I was 11 years old, and I was afraid of falling. I was afraid of going too high. I was afraid of the air underneath my feet. I was afraid of basically everything that defined rock climbing. And I was so ashamed of that fear. Growing up, I was under the impression that girls were afraid and boys were not.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Twohey with the New York Times, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to Get With the Times, our new live event series for college students. Tonight, Chelsea Handler and Megan Twohey will join us for a conversation around equality, the state of women's rights today, and how students like you can find their civic voices. First, let's meet our guests. Megan Twohey is a prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Times who has focused much of her attention on the treatment of women and children. In 2017, she and Jodi Kantor broke the story of Harvey Weinstein's decades of alleged abuse towards women, helping to ignite the worldwide Me Too movement. Woo! Chelsea Handler's talk shows, best-selling books, and stand-up comedy have attracted millions of fans worldwide, making her one of the most successful figures in entertainment today. As the host of E's top-rated Chelsea Lately, Handler became the first female to break into the male-dominated late-night arena. She recently announced that she will join forces with Emily's List to help elect more women to public office, register people to vote, and campaign for candidates who are fighting for women's rights. The New York Times would like to thank our sponsor, The North Face, and our media sponsor, Refinery 29, for making this program possible. We'd also like to thank Syracuse and the staff who has worked tirelessly to make this event happen. We're delighted to share that tonight, the New York Times is streaming this event to thousands of students who are hosting watch parties on college campuses across the country. You'll hear from some of them later this evening. Please join me in welcoming Megan Twohey and Chelsea Handler.
Guys, hi.
This is beautiful lighting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here with us tonight, and thank you, Chelsea, for taking some time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
So it's no secret that you have become more politically active over the past year and a half or so. And if I recall correctly, one of your sort of first forays into activism was leading the Women's March in Park City during the Sundance Film Festival last year. And I think that there was somebody in the crowd that day who I have spent a lot of time reporting on. I believe Harvey Weinstein was at the Women's March last year. And anyway, it made
That's
me
interesting.
it made me wonder. If you knew him, if you had crossed paths with him, and if the reporting we've done at the New York Times over the last 6 months, helping to expose him as somebody who had preyed on women, sexually abused and sexually harassed women over many years, came as a surprise to you.
No, I had always heard the rumors about Harvey Weinstein, but I never, nobody ever said to me they were raped by Harvey Weinstein. I've met Harvey Weinstein several times, at parties or whatever. I've never been alone with him because I'm not a movie star. I've been alone with his brother, Bob Weinstein. We had a breakfast meeting years ago, and he came downstairs in this wrinkled, disgusting shirt, disheveled, and had a business meeting with me in a private dining room. And I'm like, why do we have a dining room when it's just the two of us? And then I sent him a little travel iron, and I was like, get your fucking shit together. You look like a fat slob. So that was my only interaction with the Weinstein family. And that deal did not go through.
Yeah. So you don't remember seeing him at the? You don't remember seeing him at the march?
No, I mean it was Sundance, yeah. So they asked me to lead the march at Sundance because I had been there the year before, and I was happy to do it. I love Sundance; it's a great event to go to. You don't have to change outfits 18 times, and it was for a good cause. Yeah. And Harvey, Miramax, obviously, or whatever the Weinstein company it was at that point, they're always represented there. But no, I don't. I've only met him. The last time I saw him was at a Planned Parenthood event with Cecile Richards and Hillary Clinton for the anniversary, their millennial anniversary, was it? Or no? 100th anniversary, if that's millennial. We don't know. You should know.
Yeah,
Can you please tell me? I saw him at that event. and
Yeah.
he had just gotten knee surgery. Anyway, that's the story I've got.
Okay, got it. Well, I mean, Weinstein was just one of many men, powerful men in a variety of industries who have been exposed in recent months as predators, as people who preyed on young women in the workplace. And once again, the figures have spanned all industries, but there do seem to be high numbers. It does seem like there were high numbers of predators exposed in the world of entertainment and media. And you've worked in the business for a long time, and I was just wondering, I'm hearing you say that Harvey Weinstein never tried to do anything to you, but have you had any experiences over the years with sexual harassment?
I haven't. I have never been sexually, not that I'm aware of, you know what I mean? Like I don't have anything to speak of where I felt taken advantage of as a woman. That never happened to me. And when I say that to people, sometimes they say, well, with your personality, that's so unfair to the people that have been targeted and that have been sexually assaulted, because it's not about being a strong woman. I guess it's about being lucky or something, whatever. It has nothing to do with who you are. It's just a matter of your circumstance. And so I've never been in a situation where I felt like I had to have sex with somebody for a job. No.
And were you surprised by the revelations of the last 6 months?
I think the revelations of the last 6 months are a complete referendum on Donald Trump being elected to the presidency. I think women are like, what the fuck did we just do? And it reminds me of that Fannie Lou Hamer quote in the civil rights movement where she said, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Black people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Women are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it is imperative that we all know what's happening, because if it doesn't happen to us, it's not in our lane, doesn't mean it hasn't happened to the 5 or 7 people around us, because the statistics show that it does happen to 5 out of 7 women, that 17 million women across the world have been sexually assaulted. It's all over the place. So to ignore it is to live in a lane and be delusional about your own experience. You have to reach out and reach across the aisle, so to speak, to other people's experiences and say, wow, this is happening. It didn't happen to me, but it's still my problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a reporter at the New York Times, I not only was one of the reporters who worked on the Weinstein investigation, I also did coverage of Trump during the presidential race.
Lucky girl.
Specifically, and actually worked with some of the women who came forward with allegations of sexual misconduct against him. And by the time that voters went to the polls, I think that there were more than 10 women who had come forward with allegations of groping and other unwanted advances and misconduct. And it's interesting. At the same time, we were talking about this backstage. I was on election day. I was actually in Hillary Clinton's hometown, interviewing women who were going in and out of the polling place to ask who they were voting for, and it was clear that I'd say 50% of the women that I talked to were voting for Trump. And I guess that my question is, what, and you've been going around and talking to, having conversations across the country. What do you think? What do you think explains on the one hand, you say you think that what happened with the outrage that came with Harvey Weinstein and other people who have been exposed for sexual harassment and predatory behavior was a referendum on Trump's presidency. But on the other hand, he has enjoyed a sort of large, substantial support from women voters. And what do you think explains that? What do you think that says about women in this country?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that 54% of white women voted for Donald Trump and 94% of black women didn't. Because black people know how to vote in their best interests, and women sometimes don't. And I also believe that it's so ingrained in us to compete with each other because there are, fewer slots than there are for men. So we think if someone gets our spot, I've been guilty of it. I've been jealous of other people that are in my arena, thinking there's only room for 1 of us, or 2 of us, or 5 of us, or whatever the number is. And what we have to realize, which is so evident now with the Me Too, with the Time's Up movement, with all of these movements. We are stronger together. We're stronger with men on our side. We're stronger when we're together and we stick together and vote in our best interests. And when we have a group and we say, no more, that's how it's going to work. You know, we're fearless and we're forward, and we know it because of the numbers that are coming together. It means something different now. Now we know it's okay if one of us succeeds, because that means more of us succeed.
So I was asking you about working in the entertainment industry, but you have also worked even more specifically within comedy, and I know you've been in the business for a long time, and it's a sort of a traditionally male-dominated field.
That's why I went into it. It's not a joke. I was just trying to find a boyfriend. No, I'm kidding.
So I know it's been traditionally male-dominated, but when I look around today, it really seems like there are so many female comedians, that funny women are everywhere, and that they're dominating in a way that I just don't remember ever happening. I think about Sarah Silverman, I think about Tiffany Haddish, I think about Amy Schumer, Kate McKinnon on, just seems to steal the show on Saturday Night Live every week. And I'm just wondering if that is something, if that's a shift that I am am I correct to perceive a shift in terms of the role or the presence of women in comedy?
I think there's been a shift. I think there's been a shift in every arena for females. I think that things are changing because because we're getting louder, because we don't sit down and shut up, because we're saying, oh, I don't need to get married when I'm 25 years old or 26 years old. No judgment on that, but obviously it's a mistake. You gotta keep it moving. We gotta keep this movement moving. There is a movement happening. If Hillary Clinton had been elected, this would not have happened, I don't believe. People would have thought, oh, victory lap, we did it, we're done. It's like the civil rights movement. Why are we still fighting for black people not to get shot in their backyard when they have done nothing and they're not armed? Why are we still fighting for that? So, unfortunately, I experienced in my career, as a comedian, the people that held me back the most were women. They weren't other female comedians. They were women in positions of power, whether they were at networks or whether they were running comedy clubs. They were threatened by women giving women space. That's what I felt. The men were like, yeah, but party on, welcome, let's go. They were excited for girls to be there. So for me, that was so disenchanting, because as soon as I got my own show, I was like, all I want to do is put women up here, women up here. It doesn't matter, my best friend says this to me, her name is Mary McCormick. She's like, you don't have to be everybody's best friend, but you have to be a sister to every woman. And I never forgot that. And it's so important to prop women up, and not to discount men. We need men. We need you. We're not trying to take over and get rid of you and make you have babies. We just need it to be equal. We need a seat at the table, and with the civil rights movement, even though it's clearly not over, it changed when white people got involved. So whoever, the underdog in the situation or the fight is, and in our case, it's women, we need men to stand with us.
Well, back to the subject of marches. It's been really remarkable in recent months to watch young people taking to the streets in ways that just feel unprecedented. Looking at the anti-gun control, the pro-gun control, the anti-gun marches that have taken place. I think just yesterday there were high school students in Oklahoma who were walking out with their teachers to demand more money for education in their cash-strapped schools there. And you have been traveling around the country on college campuses like this, talking to young people.
I drove today. We drove from Pittsburgh today, 4.5 hours, and we had Wendy's. And McDonald's. We had McDonald's and Wendy's.
Nice.
So obviously I'm not feeling great.
So you've been seeing young folks up close. What have been your impressions during your visits? What are you discovering?
I know when I was this age, or for most of you who are here tonight, I'm assuming you're in college, perhaps not, but I know that I voted, but I wasn't engaged. I wasn't politically active. I didn't care about the, like granular levels of elections or special elections. I didn't know what a special election was when I was 19 years old. I didn't know that there were midterms. I didn't know about electing your, a Supreme Court or a circuit judge or whatever you elect in the court system. I didn't know about electing your superintendent. I didn't think those things were in your control or that you could be an advocate for candidates. So what I've learned in the last few years, or a couple of years, I should say, is that it's easy to know more. It's easy to be involved. I'm a real mouthpiece right now, and I know it's very divisive, but I don't give a shit because it's a fucking emergency. So, it doesn't feel good to have people tell you, whatever, if you're going to read Twitter, then you're going down a wormhole anyway, and you can't focus on that stuff. But it's so imperative to get engaged at an early age, and that you stay engaged, and that you know your shit, and that you're informed. It's powerful to be informed and to know about elections and to have a hand in a candidate that you believe in, your city councilman. All of this stuff adds up, and it's all like, it all ends up being something that you stand for. So you have to find out what your values are, and even if it's a down ballot issue, like, if you care about the legalization of marijuana and you want to find candidates that represent that, then that's your guy or your woman. If you care about having the right to choose, then that's your issue. You just have to find one thing you care about a lot, and then fucking go for it. Because this is our lives. These are our lives. We're all, well, you guys all probably have children. You have to do that for the next generation. Too many people fought for us for too long to say, I don't have time for this, or I don't want to watch the news, or I don't want to get involved, I don't want to lose followers. You have to do it. I think it's a social responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think that what's truly remarkable is to see what can happen when young people do use their voices. I think that what we're seeing is that young people can make a difference where really nobody else can, that their voices break through the gridlock in Washington and just the total cynicism that seems to have taken over the political landscape. And so it brings me a lot of hope to see the activism that does exist.
Well, what was so great was that march in DC last weekend or the weekend before, March for Our Lives, with all those kids from Parkland standing up and speaking, and they didn't want celebrities. I mean, celebrities put the whole thing together, and there were tons there. They didn't want us to speak, and which is the right thing. Why should we be talking about that? It's not our experience. But watching them, it was the first time I was like, oh, we're going to be great in about 20 years, because these people will be running our country. And we already fucked it up.
Well, so speaking of sort of 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds, you said that you weren't active, and when you weren't sort of an activist at 19. I think that maybe you may, and I don't think that you were in college, right? Or you were in college?
No,
maybe
I didn't get accepted anywhere.
So
I also didn't apply anywhere because I knew what the outcome would be. But yeah, no, my high school years weren't my best. I'm not really sure what my best years have been, but...
Well, what were you like at 19 and 20, and what did you care about?
I was selfish. I wanted to move to LA. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to get away from my family because I thought they were kind of disasters. My dad was a used car dealer. I wanted to have success. I wanted a cleaning lady. I wanted the things that a 19-year-old cares about. And, I wanted people to know my name. Like, I would be lying if that weren't the reason. And then you get a little bit of that, I think, goes a long way. There are a million beautiful things about it, but you get them to a certain age. I'm 43 now. You start to evaluate, what am I contributing here? What am I doing? And it's a very cliche, probably frame of mind. I mean, we discussed this backstage as well, but you do reevaluate, and you're like, what am I going to use this for? Just keep cashing checks and sitting around making fun of whomever? I want to do something real, and for me, it was really important. I am an elitist. That's what I always wanted to be. I wanted to have a ton of money and live in LA and be famous and do whatever the fuck I wanted, whenever I wanted. I got that. And now, when I kept hearing that word after the election, I was like, that's not true. That's not true. I've been around to all these cities. I did stand-up for 10 years, 20 years. I went to every city that nobody ever needs to go to again. Obviously present company excluded. But I really thought that I wasn't. And then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, you were. You are, you're exactly what they're accusing you of being. So for me, to take this time off and get behind candidates that I support, to partner with Emily's List, to get as many women, to get as many gay people, to get as many first people elected to the Senate, to the House of Representatives, is we have an opportunity to do something that we've never done before. There are over 300 women running, for Congress this year. 300.
It's a record.
Like, we have the first, African-American mayors. We have the first Vietnamese-American delegate to run in the Virginia House of Delegates. We have so many firsts. First transgender. We have so many firsts. If we just keep this momentum up and we become, we have to remain tireless and we have to invoke it in our friends. If you can just get one of your friends who's not involved to care about one of the issues they care about, then we're going to change it. And then this is a beautiful time to be alive.
Yeah. So it's very clear that you have, in fact, gone through a lot of changes in the last couple of years, admittedly, proudly. And, you've said that you saw Trump's election as sort of a call to arms, that you felt compelled to become more civilly engaged and to fight for certain causes. But it's one thing to kind of have this stirring inside you and say, I want to change, and it's another thing to actually do it. And I was wondering if you could kind of, practically speaking, talk to us a little bit about exactly how you did that. How did you change? Were there certain people that you turned to for guidance? Were there certain books or newspapers that you started to read that helped you sort of change your desire into action?
There's an author called Rebecca Solnit who has written a book called Men Explain Things to Me, among many others. I'm sure you're familiar with her, and I'm sure many of you are. And the first part of Men Explain Things to Me, or one of her other, maybe Hope in the Dark, she talks about walking into a party and talking to a man who's telling her about her own book. He's like, you should really learn about this. And she's like, I wrote the book. And he's like, no, listen. And she's like, no, I wrote the book. And he keeps telling her about it. And, sometimes you read one thing in a book and it registers, then you go, oh, that's happened to me so many times. I just didn't see it through that filter. And then she's very statistic driven. I've optioned the books actually to make it into a TV show, so we're working on that right now. But she talks about, campus rape and how they put curfews at certain campuses for the women. When men were allowed to be out after 10 o'clock, and there weren't any women raping men. It was men raping women. That patriarchy is so backwards. And that made me think, and I think my father gave me one piece of good advice in my entire life. And he said, you can take one sentence out of one book. You may not understand the book, but there's always one thing that will ring true and change the way that you think. And that was kind of a moment where I thought, oh, okay, I didn't go to college. I don't know how rampant that was. You only hear about it. And again, it's the experiences that are not your own that are important to pay the most attention to. You can't just pay attention to what's happening in your life because it's usually, it's not the exact same as everybody else's. We all know that.
You talked about, you sort of made mention of Twitter, and I think it's interesting, as a reporter, 15 years ago when I was starting off as a reporter, I was working in Wisconsin, and I was covering higher education. I was covering colleges and universities and would spend time on campus hanging out with students and writing stories about them. And I did a story 15 years ago about this new thing that was happening that all the college kids were into called Facebook, and the fact that people were really into Facebook, and I was explaining to our readers who knew nothing about it how it worked, and quoted students about how they felt about it. And there was one quote to the extent that was something like, oh my God, it's so addicting. And it's just remarkable to think back on the fact that that was a newsworthy story, because here we are years later and everybody is addicted to, everybody's hooked on not just Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram. And I know you're active on those social media platforms.
I hate social media. It's good messaging, but it's really, sometimes it's undignified.
Well, I was going to ask you, we've realized that it can be a powerful tool, a platform to promote causes you care about and share information. And we're also now realizing that it's been, that Facebook has been infiltrated, was infiltrated by the Russians and has been used, used for political purposes and to try to manipulate our thinking. I was just wondering, it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I was wondering sort of what your genuine feelings are about
Well, I
social
optioned
media.
another book called I Hate the Internet, which is basically about how people can just, people's lives are ruined by the internet. Forget about the fact that it's addictive, that we all have ADD now because we can't fucking pay attention without looking at our phone 15 times in the middle of a conversation or at a dinner table. I mean, do we want to behave that way? I don't. I do, but I don't want to. It's all addictive. It's all like sale. Everybody is for sale. The three big companies, Google and Amazon and Apple, they are controlling our brains. And we're allowing them to control our brains. And the book I'm telling you about, we sold it to TNT because it's such an important thing to take down these companies that are so powerful over us. We want to have experiences. I don't want little girls to look on Instagram and see the groups of people that they were left out of that weekend. Elementary school was already a big pain in the ass for me, Yeah. I can't even imagine what little kids grow up with and the insecurities and the feeling of being left out. We already all feel that way. Whether we're left in or left out, we always don't feel like we fit in. Every single person in this room has felt that way. So I don't know. I hope there's some sort of backlash. I like getting information. I like reading Twitter every morning and getting news and getting info. But, I have a problem with presenting a false sense of self to a community of people that look up to you.
Well, we're actually going to pivot now. We're going to take some questions. We've got some questions coming in by video, and we're going to have some questions from the audience.
Video.
And we're actually going to start with a video question.
My name is Kate Reasons. I'm a junior at the University of Rochester, and my question for you is, if you were a policymaker, what first objective would you want to achieve on behalf of women's rights and gender equality?
I think this is an answer to just what I'd like to achieve first and foremost, not for women, for everyone, is to overturn Citizens United and elect representatives that don't allow you to buy politicians. There are publicly funded elections all throughout Europe. It works great. You pile it into your taxes. That's what you do. We don't want our senators, we don't want our congressmen fundraising every single free weekend that they have. We want them working, and we shouldn't be able to buy into that. Every single person in this room would vote for that. Unless you're a Koch brother or George Soros, you don't give a shit about buying into politics. You want the right man to win. So that is my first priority in electing a candidate or supporting a candidate.
I think we'll take a question from the audience.
Hey there, my name's Alyssa Candiotti. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
Hi, you look like a lot of girls I went to high school with.
Yeah, rocking it out. So many of us here today will be graduating in a few weeks, like myself. So in what ways can we help fight for equality when we enter the workplace? Any advice you have for new and young employees?
Listen, I've always really felt I've had a misplaced confidence my entire life. So I'm very much a proponent of saying what you mean and acting on it. If something's not going your way, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to defend yourself. And if you can't or don't have the strength to defend yourself for your own benefit, I always think of my sister or one of my sisters or my nieces, or my mom that has no longer here. Sometimes we can't fight for ourselves because we get a little shy and we don't want to stand up. And that's not just for women. I know that a lot of men probably feel the same way. I think it's so important to make that argument as if you're making it for somebody that you care deeply about, because then you have the strength and then you have the guts. Thank you.
We're going to take another video question.
Hello, my name is Shay and I attend Howard University. The topic of inclusion is often brought up in discussions regarding activism. What are your thoughts on movements such as Black Lives Matter that aren't fully inclusive to other marginalized groups, such as the LGBT community?
Well, I think that it would be a mistake to lump every marginalized group together, because that's not fair either. I think it's important to advocate for all groups that are marginalized, and they need to be individualized, because just because you're an immigrant or a refugee or you're black or you're LGBTQ, that that doesn't mean you can lump somebody in with a whole other group of people. I think it's so important to identify singularly all of these issues, and then you fight for these groups, and you don't stop fighting until you get what you want.
Hi, I'm Arden. So my question is, what was it in your life that sort of sparked your passion for activism?
I mean, I got pretty excited about Barack Obama because I had read his book and I heard his 2004 DNC speech, and I thought, wow, that's a guy, that's a leader. I wasn't alive during the Kennedy stuff where people were moved. Obviously I'm a Democrat, or I'm registered as an independent, but that's complete bullshit. I think that, when you see somebody that inspires you, I remember walking into my room, living room, hearing somebody speak, the way that he speaks, and was like, this is like Martin Luther King. This is something I never got to experience, Martin Luther King Jr. But, I mean, I became socially active. I've always tried to show up for, any marginalized group. Always, always, always. That is my first order of business. But I was never so politically minded that I paid attention to every ounce of legislation in my area or knew my congressman or, I do now. But it was definitely Barack Obama that made you feel like he's talking to every single one of us. And there wasn't a marginalization. It didn't feel bad, it felt great. And that's what I was like, oh, this is politics. It can be like a really inspiring, beautiful thing. And, if you get behind a cause you care about, nothing feels better than making progress. Thank you.
Hi, Chelsea. My name is Ibrahim, and I'm a student at the University of Michigan. In an interview, you once stated that you like to hold town halls and discussions where you try to learn about people's lives and understand their reasoning. My question is it ever frustrating to have discussion with someone who, while they may be a nice person, has polarizing opinions from you? How do you maintain that relationship and try to come to a place of empathy without compromising your own values? Thank you.
It's a great question. I mean, I've worked really hard on that. I mean, I'm known for being combative and being reactive, and that's my reputation, and I just, everybody thinks I just say everything that pops into my mind, and mostly that's true. But I, really had to work hard at, when I made this decision to come around the country and go to places I haven't been to, and actually, have intimate conversations like this where we're not in front of 5,000 people, where we can have questions and we can talk, is meaningful to me. And it has been a training lesson in understanding that people are coming from different points of view. I didn't understand what was going on with the opioid crisis. I didn't understand what was going on in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I didn't understand how anybody who had a family could vote for a man who spoke like that. And that meant that I didn't know enough. That meant that I had to be more informed. So to be more informed, you have to listen more, even though I'm talking the most. You have to, really sit down and have conversations with people who have opposing views. And that is the biggest lesson I've learned, to sit with Trump supporters and say, yeah, hey, by the way, I get it, we disagree. Why can't that be kind? Why can't, I want you to have health insurance. I want you to have health insurance. If you're a Trump supporter, that matters to me. So what's our common ground that we can find to highlight the things that make you a decent person? I don't think that makes you a bad person, and I don't think anybody who voted for Trump is necessarily a bad person. I think that it's about a conversation, and the lack of conversations is what led us here in the first place.
Hi, Chelsea. First of all, I've been reading your books and watching your shows since long before it was appropriate for me to do so.
I was doing them long before it was appropriate for me to be doing them.
Incredible. Also, I wanted to know what you think has been your most rewarding experience in regards to your activism.
I like just being able to see faces, I felt, I was doing my show. I did a show for so many years on E! And then I moved to Netflix, and I just felt like I wasn't out and about in a way, and I'm like a social being. I want to see people, I want to talk to people, I want to hear what's going on, and I like ideas, and I like young people, and I want to know what the next, action, the next contribution I can make. I'm fucking the luckiest person that I know. I've lucked out, and that's because I'm probably a lot to do with my privilege. Not probably, definitely. You know, I didn't have a tough time with anything. I work hard, but I've never had to struggle, never been hungry, never had, you know, a lack of food. I've never been discriminated against that I know of. So for me, it's rewarding to make sure I'm more informed and that I learn more about what it's like to not be a white woman in this country.
Hey Chelsea, it's Hawar from Holy Cross. My question is, how do we address the wage gap and what can we actually do to help fix it?
Boyfriend. No, seriously, we slept together last night. I think we're working on the wage gap. I mean, that's part of the Time's Up movement. You know, I mean, that's what everybody's working on, is setting an agenda for different companies. I know they did it at my agency, my talent agency. They did it, you know, the girls that started the Time's Up movement, putting together the fund they did, the legal defense fund, and actually making people have goals, not just making a commitment that can be measured in a matter of time. And unfortunately, we have to correct the situation. You can't just say to women, you don't get to make as much as men. That is totally not okay and not acceptable. So it is an army, you know, this feels like an army of women that are saying no more, you know, time's up, time's up.
It's Gabrielle, and I wanted to know, what is the moment you are most proud of in your career?
I don't know if I'm proud of anything that much. I mean, maybe dating 50 Cent. I was proud of that moment. That got a lot of mileage. I liked that. I did that. Thought that was fun. No, to answer your question, I don't know. I mean, I don't think of myself in that way. I like to always just be moving forward. I love to be, I'm proud that I'm doing this. I am engaged, and I'm proud about the thirst I have for like knowledge, but I don't know, career related. You know, a lot of those moments become kind of a phantasmagoria of, it happens so fast that you're like all of a sudden playing at Radio City Music Hall and you don't even appreciate that moment. I don't like that. I don't like when I walk out and people have paid money to see me and I'm not on my game. That makes me feel like shit. What makes me feel good is when I'm present and I'm engaged and I can have a good time with people and have real conversations. So that's of more merit to me now. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
My name is Chelsea Busick, and I'm from San Jose State University, and my question for Chelsea is, what was once tolerable to you and now is no longer tolerable as a woman?
I think because I have never experienced sexual harassment, because I've always been, like, you know, the boss in my career. You know, I think that was the great thing about stand-up, was kind of, you create your own path. You're not being placed in a show. You're not like a character in a sitcom. You kind of, they create a show around you, or they create a talk show around you. So I was never in the position of being sexually harassed, but I definitely have had men that worked for me that were inappropriate with women that have worked for me. And I didn't, you know, I didn't necessarily take it as seriously as I would now. I mean, I don't think nobody was coming to me being sexually assaulted or anything of that nature, but men who were inappropriate in the workplace. You know, it sucks that we have to overcorrect like this, or not overcorrect, that's the wrong term, to correct like this, because, you know, I like, you know, most people meet somebody at work. Now, nobody can even say anything at work, but it's necessary. It's a necessary thing, and I, you know, look back at all, after the fact, so many of the people that worked for me told me stories about the guys, and like, oh, they were so disgusting, they were so inappropriate. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had known more, and I wish I had done more, and, you know, I'm not proud of that. It's not okay. It's not okay for a woman to feel threatened because there's a superior that's a male. Obviously, that can't happen anymore.
It's interesting. There was somebody who had asked you about your some of the sort of career highlights, some of the your biggest successes over the years. But I was wondering, as somebody who has done all these different things, you know, and not just on TV, you have written these books, and you're now have taken this pivot and are embracing activism. And I know, at least from my experience, that it can be scary to do new things and take on new challenges. So I was wondering if there were things about your, if there were particular challenges that you had over the years that, like particular moments in time that were most challenging for you. People can sort of step back and see it from the outside and it looks like all success, but I'm wondering if there were any moments that, when you were coming up in which you really kind of were struggling or had a hard time or, were struggling to transition into something new and how you did that.
I would say this. I would say I didn't appreciate the time I had when I was struggling. Like, I think it was fun to be broke and go to my ATM card and take out like $4 at the time when you could take out $4 increments. Like, I didn't think that was fun. Now I look back and I'm like, that was part of the ride. Like, you should have enjoyed not knowing where your life was going to go, not knowing who was going to be your boyfriend, not knowing if you were going to marry somebody, not knowing if you were going to have a baby. The adventure is it. And for every person sitting here today, you're about to embark on a huge adventure. You better enjoy being broke. Enjoy not knowing where the future is going to lead. Enjoy the one-night stand you have and the men and girls that you date and break up with. Enjoy heartbreak. It's all fucking beautiful and fun. And at the time, you think it's the end of the world. So for me, I look back at all of those. I thought my life doesn't begin until I have money, until I can be independent. I don't want to rely on my parents. I just wanted independence so badly. I didn't want a man. I just wanted my own stuff because I grew up with 5 kids. And I think that the most important thing to pay attention to is the time where you really are finding your way, because that's really fucking fun.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. That is going to conclude the part of our program that is being broadcast. And so thank you again, Chelsea. Thank you, Syracuse. And thank you to the people who were able to record those amazing questions.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
But the great part is that we get to be here for another 15 minutes and continue talking to her.
Yeah, get up, ask questions. Let's talk.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd like to open up the floor to some more questions.
Selected, move towards the center. If you submitted a question, you can come towards the center. You know who you are.
And if anyone here voted for Trump, I'd love to talk to you.
Yay.
In a nice, yeah,
Great.
Let's do it. Let's have a, please, come up. Don't be shy.
No.
Well, on the stage, okay, sure, come on up. You can come on up if you want, sure.
You can come towards the center.
I think there's
a
actually
mic over here.
Let's do the
mic.
Let's do the process. Yeah,
right down the center aisle.
There.
Make a right and come straight. There we are.